calling the special meeting of the Sacramento City Unified School District Board of Education to order for Tuesday, May 25th.
Recording in progress.
Member Garcia. Pritchett.
Here.
Member Rhodes. Present. Member Villa.
I think maybe she dropped off. Oh, I don't see her on my screen. Can you unmute her?
Member Wu.
Present.
Member Villa, are you able to hear us?
I can hear you now.
Okay, Superintendent, you want to call?
Member Villa. We're taking roll, Member Villa.
Member Villa, are you able to hear us? Member Villa, are you able to hear us now?
No.
Okay. Member Phillips?
Yep.
We're taking roll.
And we're taking, and Member Phillips.
Okay. There are no comments for close, so we will move right into close. Thank you. All right, welcome back. We are reconvening. Hold on one second. I can hear the volume on my computer, Vincent. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, perfect. All right. With that, item 5.0, update on reopening discussion / approval of collapsing additional cohorts. Mr. Bozio and Ms. Spieda.
Okay. Thank you, President Pritchett. Good evening, Board, Superintendent. I'm Raul Bozio, in-house counsel, here to share with you an update on our reopening. Do we have the clicker? Or Vincent, will you guys control it? That's fine. That's fine. There's not a lot of slides. Okay. So as the board is aware, the goal of the board has been to bring back as many students as possible to in-person learning. And in that regard, the board passed Board Resolution 3196 on April 22nd, which included in part that the board instructs staff to expand in-person learning time opportunities to at least the pre-pandemic model before the end of the 2021 school year, where and when feasible. Next slide. Consistent with that direction, beginning on May 18th, the district combined cohorts of students to return 4 days per week. At elementary schools, where combining was possible with the 6 feet distance, physical distancing. Classrooms that had capacity to accommodate additional students meeting AB 86 criteria to attend in-person instruction have also been added to 4-day-a-week students attending school in person. And that work has recently started just this week. Next slide, please. The district continues to analyze the combining of cohorts at 3 feet physical distancing at its elementary schools, secondary schools, including the smaller high schools. Next slide. Continued efforts would be, of course, necessary, required, should the board direct further action to, again, increase the number of students able to come back 4 days each week. preparation of classrooms, right? More desks and so forth would be included. And of course, we would need to make sure that the district can meet its nutritional, transportation, and other student services requirements that the district has. That concludes our presentation. So we can go ahead and open this up for comments and board discussion.
Thank you. All right. We actually have 20 public comments. We want to ensure that we hear from each member of our public. So we will allow all 20 public comments at 1 minute per public comment. Sheila?
We have Alina Cervantes.
Hello, I'm here. I'll have to, I planned a 2-minute comment, so I'm going to be a speed reader tonight. Can you tell me when my time starts?
Of course, time has started.
I'm speaking tonight as a parent in favor of abandoning the outdated 6 feet spacing and allowing children to return to school for as many days and hours as they can. I never thought I'd have to beg a school district to follow science and let our kids go to school. But here we are, stuck in the twilight zone with SCTA, the most anti-child organization in Sacramento. My daughters don't understand why it's okay for them to eat lunch outside and then go back to their after-school program with other teachers, but they can't go back to their own classrooms a few feet away. They ask, why is the union refusing to follow the science, Mommy? I tell them straight up, it's because the union doesn't care about them or their education. It's frankly not their job, but it's mine and it's yours. As an educator of over 25 years and a dues-paying member of my own union, I've never seen anything like SCTA's continued assault on this city's children. You were each elected to have our children's backs, so you need to step up your game. We're sick of empty statements and social media updates with no teeth. We need you loud and public-facing. Don't talk about it, be about it.
Thank you.
Brenda Wolfson.
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, we can
Okay, hi.
hear you.
Okay, I'm going to go fast.
Okay.
I'm a grandmother of 2 school-age children, a community member, and a believer in public education as the great equalizer for all of our children. I've also been a union member, and I am also a nurse. And I have a duty to my profession. I have not missed 1 day of work during this pandemic. And I agree with the previous speaker. I am embarrassed for the teachers union blocking our children from going back to school. First graders, kindergartners cannot learn on Zoom. And this is science. The CDC and the California Department of Health have said that a 3-foot distance is safe. Other school districts in our county are educating their children full-time in school, and only Sacramento is now the last holdout for not getting our kids back. So I implore you, the Board of Education, please stand up to the teachers' unions and get our kids back in school where they belong, and please come up with a plan to
Thank
get
you, Ms. Wolfson.
back full-time in the fall. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Dan Okenfuss. Desiree Throckmorton.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you. New York City and Los Angeles, the 2 largest U.S. public school districts, on Monday announced plans to fully reopen schools, part of a parent-led nationwide trend amid a sustained decline of COVID-19 infections and the rise in vaccinations. In Los Angeles County, which I would say is similar, probably more diverse and much larger than us, is moving forward to open in the fall. We ask that you do the same for our students. Los Angeles County has more than 600,000 pupils. Why can you not do the same for us? Advocate for us. Do for these children what needs to be done. Get it right for these kids and their tax-paying parents. That is all I have.
Thank you.
Eric Schranz.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
So thanks to the members of the board, to Superintendent Aguilar and President Pritchett for calling this special meeting tonight to again discuss a vitally important issue. My name is Eric Schranz. I'm a parent, volunteer, and employee in the district, as well as a board member of SCUSD Students First. I'll make this brief. By all indications, you're ready to vote on an important matter tonight, and I want to thank you and let you know how much support you have from the community. It's time to combine the cohorts, follow scientific guidelines, and take this important step towards getting our kids back to the classroom. Labor is going to fight you on this, a lot. You're in a very tough position, but please understand the active parents and community who want what's best for the students, not just for the union members, have your back. The unions, SEIU and SCTA, are doing a tremendous disservice. They're frankly embarrassing their members with their belligerent, non-scientific, stubborn, and capricious actions, and they're doing harm to the very students they claim to protect. These kids miss their friends. They're struggling. The teachers are doing an amazing job with their creativity and hard work, but they're maxed out, and now it's up to you in this vote to stick up for the kids. This won't be the final solution to full-time in-person instruction, but it's a huge step in the right direction. As a member of SUSD Students First, please vote to open tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Gwen Spann.
Good evening. I have 3 children in the district, 4th, 6th, and 10th grades. And I'm going to keep this pretty short and sweet, as I don't think we really need to belabor what I think everybody really already knows and a lot of people have already communicated tonight. We need to get these kids back into the classroom for as much time as possible in the remainder of the school year. I am in full support of collapsing all grade level cohorts to allow children to have full time in the classroom. My 4th grade son asked if he could speak, and so I'm going to give him a little of my time.
Hello, we should go back to schools full time because it's hard to juggle both distance learning and Zoom at the same time. Also, we should follow the 3 feet rule because scientific facts have shown that. Thank you. That is all we want to say.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Holly Conway. Ingrid Hutchins.
Hello, I'll be combining my time with Holly Conway, Jody Bone, and Alan Cox tonight.
Okay.
Good evening. My name is Ingrid Hutchins, and I am a 2nd grade teacher at Golden Empire. After our discussions over the past 2 meetings, I also feel it's important to point out that I am one of your few Black teachers in your district. Normally, I don't feel the need to point out that detail about myself, but as I tried to point out the data from CDC last week about COVID cases among Black people, some comments were made about my ability to do so. So I thought perhaps I should point that out. This is not performative. This is me speaking and advocating for, for my demographic. Last week, I did say that when we look at CDC's guidelines, we are only looking at the words 3 feet, and we're not looking at all the nuances involved in it. You're missing the point that it can't be less than 3 feet, which means, yes, it can be more. You're missing the part where it says that the masks need to be worn universally and with correct use, which they are not. And we're also missing the part where CDC says certain racial and ethnic groups have borne a disproportionate burden of illness and serious outcomes from COVID-19. These health disparities are evident even among school-aged children, suggesting that in-person instruction might pose a greater risk of COVID-19 to disproportionately affected populations. For these reasons, health equity considerations related to in-person instruction are an integral part of this complex decision-making. That is an exact quote from the CDC guidelines. I'm not paraphrasing, I took it word for word. Contrary to what one board member wants to believe, yes, there are race and ethnic-based health disparities. As someone who's lost a loved one from COVID, I heard firsthand from his doctors how his chances of survival were going to be reduced due to these disparities. I believe the words of doctors and scientists on the matter over the beliefs of those sitting on the school board. And as you say, I am following that science. I pointed out the needs of our district are vastly different from the needs of surrounding districts. One member tried to say that I was thinking that our kids are less deserving of having open schools. I don't think that at all. What I'm trying to do is make sure that one group of our students is not bearing the burden of the risk for the others. We have zip codes within our school district that still have vaccination numbers that are in the 30s and 40s. But these decisions are being made based on the zip codes that have their vaccination rates in the 60s and 50s. That's not appropriate. It's not fair. It's nowhere near racial equity. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jason Spann.
Good evening, board members. I'd like to state my support with the board voting to collapse all cohorts and providing 4 days a week in-person instruction for the remainder of the school year. As representatives of the people, it is time that our duly elected board members make the determinations affecting students' academic success and emotional and mental health, as opposed to special interest leaders hired and paid to represent the interest of teachers and staff. That has occurred for way too long, and it needs to stop. The power should ultimately lie with the people and not special interests. I encourage the board to have the courage to vote for what science and reason supports. Vote yes on collapsing all cohorts for all grades now and ensure a return to full-time in-person learning in the fall. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Jeanine Rupert.
Hi, how are you? Thank you for giving me time to speak today. I'm Jeanine Rupert. I'm a 20-year teacher in our district and the mother of 4 children in our schools. Tonight, I come to you simply as a voice for the kids. No politics, no bargaining chips, no ego, agendas, or taking sides. Over the past year, I've watched my students and my own children quickly lose the sparkle in their eyes. Virtual learning has left them feeling alone, cooped up, unheard, uninvolved, uninspired, left behind, defeated, glitchy, and sad. It's been horrendous for our kids and irreversibly detrimental for some. The most frustrating part is that it's in our control to get these kids back to school full time, and we're not breaking the mold with this concept, and yet we continue to fail them. Today in class, I told my 6th graders that I'd be speaking on their behalf. Today in class. I asked them to share their thoughts on in-person learning, and here's what they shared. The classroom is an actual learning environment. It's a quiet, clean place to learn. It's easier to focus and stay engaged. I enjoy hands-on activities and group work. It's good for my mental and optical health. I am more productive. I'm sick of staring at a screen. I like reconnecting with my teachers. I can communicate more efficiently. I missed my friends. They also use words like building, creating.
Wrap it up, Miss Rupert. Thank you.
Oh, can I have one more sentence, please?
Sure.
Thank you. Please stop listening to the baseless opinions of a few contentious adversarial top dogs that don't represent the vast majority of our parents, teachers, and most importantly, our children. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Jennifer Henderson.
Hi, this is Jen Henderson, and I'm a mother of 2 kids in 2nd and 4th grade, and I'm here to voice my support of collapsing the cohorts to allow 3 feet distancing. And I would also suggest that we look at moving past the half days to a full day starting this school year, not next school year. Thanks.
Thank you.
Jessica Maines. Joe Smith. John Myers.
Good evening, board and superintendent. This is John Myers, parent to 3 Sac City students, and with the parents groups Open Sac City Schools and SCUSD Students First. For months, our parents groups have demanded that the board follow a simple guiding principle. The principle is always put students' needs first. Tonight's agenda is a good example of students' needs being put first. For this, we thank you and we commit our support. Whatever the board might be proposing, SCUSD students will receive far too little classroom instruction. Our parents groups are grateful for the leadership displayed. With so many competing interests, we know that this vote tonight may be difficult for some of you. We suggest your decision becomes a lot easier if you follow that one simple guiding principle. Put students' needs first. Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
Karen Rice.
Good evening, board members. It's been more than 2 months now since CDC changed the guidance for spacing between students in classrooms from 6 feet to 3 feet. Our state and county health departments soon followed, as did many districts, but of course ours did not. I just want to remind you that the current MOU clearly states that if any provision contained in the MOU conflicts with revised or updated guidelines, that the parties agree to meet and confer. I'd also point out that statewide and nationwide, there are many school districts that are larger than this one and just as, if not more diverse, that have adopted the 3-foot distance. For these 2 months, SCTA leadership has failed to follow its own bargaining agreement by refusing to even meet or giving any sound reason to justify its inaction. Families have watched and listened while their children have been held hostage by union leaders who refuse to recognize and adhere to the science. So many families have already left the district this year. So many more are on the brink of leaving now, tired of just watching and tired of feeling hopeless. Please give families some sense of hope, bypass the current MOU, change the distancing to 3 feet between students, and collapse the A and B cohorts now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Lisa Riley.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. Thank you, school board members, for calling this emergency meeting. Really appreciate it. I want to express my full support of collapsing the cohort as soon as possible. I acknowledge and recognize that all are not ready to go back to school, and they have valid reasons for it, but those that are ready should not be held back. I encourage you, I implore you to get this done as soon as possible. And then secondly, I would like to say that it is critical that you announce as soon as possible a full and complete commitment to full day school returning in the fall. I mean, it has to happen by the end of June. There is absolutely no way we can wait longer than that. You are going to lose so many families. I've had 3 go through the schools already, and I've got one in 5th grade right now. And it's hard to hold on, board. So please step up, do what's right by the kids, all kids in this district, every single one. We care about them all. And stand up to the union. Parents and I venture teachers have your back. So please, please vote tonight to collapse the cohorts and return to school in person fully in the fall. Thank you.
Thank you.
Marco Martinez.
Yes, thank you. I'm actually going to give my minute to my son who wanted to speak tonight. Thank you.
As a student of the SCUSD district, I find the ignorance and hypocrisy of the teachers union aggravating. They refuse to see the facts and do not understand that their decisions affect not only our education, but also our mental health. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Paula Turner.
Hi, I'm a Sac City teacher. I'm here tonight because I believe teachers are not being heard. Our year started chaotically with the adults in charge unable to agree on how and when we could start school and how long our days would be and how much time we should be dedicating to synchronous and asynchronous, etc. Regardless, we put our heads down and we worked through the year on Zoom with minimal equipment and training. But hey, we're teachers and we do everything in spite of all the obstacles. So when it was time to go hybrid, we did that too. And even though splitting our attention between 2 classes has been quite a feat, we've done it. Not as well as we'd liked, but we've done it. So while having students back in the classroom has been amazing, 2 days a week is not enough. Many of my students come into person learning, but they won't show up on Zoom for the remaining days of the week. We could have more students in our classes if we would just adhere to the CDC guidelines, which we know what they all are. Our transmission in Sac County is substantial, which would allow for this 3 feet. I attempted to address the 3 feet versus 6 feet physical distancing issue with the union and asked why we couldn't be pulled on this important issue and was told it's not possible to have a district-wide vote on every decision made. While I understand that, the issue is an important one. So I conducted my own poll. And it was sent to 50 plus teachers and then found out 100% of those that were polled would be willing to go to 3 feet in our classrooms. So I'm speaking tonight because teachers want to be heard and we want to teach our kids. Please consider following the science and not the politics.
You could please wrap it up. Thank you so much.
One last thing. Please consider making a plan for in-person 5 days a week in the fall. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Turner.
Stephanie Shaw.
Hello. Hi, my name is Stephanie Shaw, and I'm the parent of 2 children in the district. It has been 438 days since my children have attended a full week of school in person. For obvious reasons, I understand why the unprecedented school closures occurred, but that was over a year ago. Today, we have vaccines. Today, the numbers tell us we are flattening the curve. Today, science tells us it is safe for our kids to go back to school. And today, I voice my strong support for consolidating the in-person cohorts ASAP and returning to in-person classes 5 days a week in the fall. The CDC, WHO, and the American Academy of Pediatrics state that the 3 feet between students is acceptable if prevention measures are maximized. These include masks, ventilations, frequent hand washing, encouraging students and staff to stay home when they have symptoms or exposure. All of these prevention measures are already in place. There is simply no reason for our district to remain on the sidelines. It is time for our district leaders to stand up and show our students that the risks to their education, well-being, and mental health outweigh the political risks keeping them out of school. There is no substitute for.
Please wrap it up. Thank you.
Please send them back to school today. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Shaw.
And our last speaker for the evening is Alan Dory.
Hello, Alan. Alan, I think you're muted. Can you unmute yourself?
Hi, I'm Alan Dory with Teamsters. I'm a business agent. I represent 2 of the bargaining units at Sac City. We know what our job is, which is to serve the community and to serve the students. Science is something that's real, and we can go 3 feet. We can collapse the cohorts. Our students and our community deserve to get back to school so that our kids can actually have an education and succeed. So while we're doing our job, we're asking the board tonight, collapse the cohorts, do the 3 feet, and please do your job to serve the community and the students. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Dory. That was the last comment?
Yes, President Pritchett.
Okay, perfect. First, I wanted to thank the community members again. We apologize for having to cut you down to 2 minutes. I know that's difficult. We wanted to make sure that we hear from every single one of you tonight. I just want to say that, our students have had so much learning loss since the beginning of this pandemic. And every minute that they're not back into the classroom is a minute too late. Anybody that's been on a Zoom meeting knows that it's not the same. It's hard to engage. It's hard to talk. The science shows us that 3 feet is sufficient. Look around at every other district. They're all doing it. And quite frankly, it's kind of an embarrassment that we're not there. And so I just want to say that in my opinion, there is no reason why we should not collapse the recommended cohorts and give our students a fighting chance. With that, I'm going to open up for board questions and comments. Member Morosky.
Thank you, President Pritchett. I feel like I've talked a lot about this issue in many, many meetings. I don't have a lot more to say other than that I agree with you. It's time to unmute our children, bring them back as much as we can within, the kind of structure we've built. There's just no justification to continue excluding our children from school. So it's the keeping this antiquated social distance. There's no basis for it anymore. It's time to move on. It's hurting our children, and happy to make a motion at the appropriate time to collapse the cohorts. I would like to maybe have a little more discussion and hear from the district as to how the logistics would work and what that would look like in elementary versus can we get there with other segments as well.
Thank you. I don't really know who had their sign up first on this side. Member Phillips.
Hi, I just want to talk about who is not speaking at these meetings, and that is predominantly our Black and brown parents who might be at work, who might be watching children, but a lot of the voices that I hear are voices from different areas in our district. I won't name them specifically because we are a diverse district. There does seem to be, I guess, a grouping of ideas regarding science. We talk about learning loss, which I think is something that we definitely need to pay attention to, but we need to focus on the fact that the learning loss occurred long before the pandemic. And there are groups of folks who are definitely missing out on this opportunity to learn and have been missing out regardless of pandemic. I understand that collapsing the cohorts is something that we can do to try and get as many children as we can back to school as soon as possible. But I just want to make clear that what we are talking about this evening is about collapsing the cohorts to make sure that children are back in school 4 days a week for their short 3-hour day, not for a full day. So, I mean, some of our parents and some of our commenters have been making it clear that sometimes they're pushing for having an opening for all day, and that's not what we're going to be voting on. So I just want to make sure that we make it clear what we are voting on specifically, which is collapsing the cohorts 3 hours, 4 days a week, and knowing full well that it's not necessarily going to benefit all of our students.
Thank you. Member Garcia?
I do, before my comments, I do want to ask for some clarifying questions. And I think they go back to Board Member Morowski's comments. Just to, and Board Member Phillips, in terms of having clear understanding of what is before us. So you're back to give us an update as to, if the board determines to combine additional cohorts in terms of preparing classrooms, ensure that we meet nutritional, transportation, and other student services. Can you unpack that for me so that I can have a better understanding what this means, and also have a deeper understanding as to which school sites we're talking about? Or is this a district-wide?
I can start. Yes.
I do want to tease that out because I think we need to separate.
Yeah. I can start. Thank you for your question, Member Garcia and Member Morowski as well. I think it's a very fair question to ask about how we would operationalize this. And I want to be very transparent. We have begun the process of combining a review of our student information system, attendance data, to see how many students have returned back to in-person instruction. We've also begun the process of working with our site leaders to make sure that that data are verified, what we call warm body counts, being able to actually see how many students are there to make sure that the data that we are using are as accurate as possible. And we've identified, given the constraints that we have with over 2,500 or so classrooms in the district, how would we make sure that we could operationalize this as quickly as possible if the board gave that direction and took that type of action? So we've identified schools, primarily at the elementary level, that would have to bring student desks into closer proximity to one another in order to collapse student groups. And those are a variety of schools across the district. They include schools like Crocker Riverside, where we have about 25 classrooms, and in order to bring more students, we'd have to make adjustments in each of those classrooms. They also include schools like Sutterville, schools like Caleb Greenwood, David Lubin, Phoebe Hurst, A.M. Wynn, Alice Burney, Leonardo da Vinci, where the vast majority of classrooms would need to be adjusted in terms of distancing between desks. We've also identified, in partnership with our site leaders, school sites where it's not the majority or all of the classrooms that would have to be adjusted, but where we have a number of classrooms. And in my visits to school sites, you can see that, where some of our cohorts might have 11 students or 12 students in each cohort. we would prioritize the adjustments of classrooms in those schools where the vast majority, if not all, the classrooms would have to go through those adjustments, and then ensure that we also go to those school sites where we've identified individual classrooms that need to be adjusted. Unfortunately, I will say, and to Member Phillips's point, we've heard how difficult it has been for many of our families, given the very short hours of instruction, of in-person instruction that are taking place, and it's heartbreaking, but it is also truthful that in my visits to a lot of school sites over the past week, since we collapsed our cohorts at 6 feet, you sometimes wonder if the collapsing actually took place, because we still have a small group of students that are attending in-person instruction 4 days a week. So to answer your question, Member Garcia, we've identified the school sites that would require us to make adjustments to all or a majority of the classrooms, down to the schools where we have 3 or 4 or even fewer classrooms that require that type of adjustment. In terms of your question about is it district-wide, we are targeting first and foremost our elementary school sites. Only because at our secondary level, this is a much more complicated process in that we might have situations where a period is collapsible and 2 are not collapsible, or 2 are collapsible, 1 is not collapsible, which would mean a heavy lift for us at this point to try to figure out how to ensure that there's activity, supervision, supports for our students during those periods and for those students that have a period that is not collapsible. That said, we've also identified some of our secondary schools that we can collapse, just as we did elementary schools at 6 feet, that could be collapsed school-wide, if you will, that we would also want to initiate the collapsing based on last week's action that we took to bring more students to in-person instruction 4 days a week. The biggest lift for us is going to be deploying resources to make sure that those adjustments are made, physical adjustments in classrooms with desks, bringing in additional desks, moving them from storage, etc. The other services also will require some effort, but I just want to acknowledge that our staff have pivoted very quickly. For example, nutrition services, when we collapsed our cohorts at the 6 feet, meant that they had to ramp up the production of our meals and organize ourselves in a way that I'm just amazed at. When I visit schools, our amazing staff have tables set up as students are exiting to pick up their lunches, and we would continue to do that. The further collapsing at 3 feet for these schools would also require additional ramping up, if you will, because they would have to produce more meals. But again, I'm just grateful and amazed at the commitment from our nutrition services department. Same thing with transportation. When we collapsed at the 6 feet, it required some more adjustments, going from 2 to 4 days a week as well. We, as you know, do not have a very robust transportation program in Sac City, so I'm not as concerned to address the transportation adjustments that have to be made. Does that answer your questions, Member Garcia?
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to make sure that it was clear that we're talking about a subset of school sites as opposed to all school sites in the district. And it's the school sites that are currently at capacity and cannot accommodate additional students, or the collapsing of the cohorts, because they're at capacity at 6 feet. And unless we reduce that social distancing, they can't bring in additional students. So
correct.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I appreciate the analysis in terms of priority order, where you identified the school sites that would have the greatest number of classrooms that need to be modified in order to accommodate the combining of the cohorts. So I also, a follow-up question is the timeline. What are we to consider in terms of how long this might take? And depending on the outcome today, what parents and educators and our school site leaders might anticipate in terms of when this might be able to happen.
Yes, again, good question. I want to go back and make one last comment to the previous question, Member Garcia, and just to clarify that in some of our schools, for many of our classrooms, we have, for all intents and purposes, already collapsed our cohorts. That is, because of the limited hours perhaps and other hardships and other responsibilities that many of our families have, there is a strong feeling that we may not see an increase in the number of students that return to 4 days of instruction because that opportunity has already been offered. So when you say it's a subset of a larger group that has already been collapsed, just to clarify that. And in terms of the timeline question, we have begun those internal discussions with all of our departments that would be responsible for this. We do, of course, have an obligation to ensure that these are tasks that we offer and ask our employees to engage in. We do believe that we would have to work into the weekend to make sure that all of this work is done. And we believe that a realistic timeline would be to begin this effort if depending on the board's decision here on this topic, next Wednesday. We know that we have a holiday this coming Monday and would want to make sure that Tuesday is used to work out those final and refine any final areas of concern and begin the process. We, of course, would communicate this out widely to our families through our fantastic administrative staff, our site leaders, so that everyone is aware that that opportunity is available.
Thank you. And just some final comments. I just want to thank the community, the parents, the grandparents, the teachers who spoke tonight in support of moving in this direction. I am sorry that we are now just at this point where we have a decision to make before us. I wish this could have happened sooner. And I just think it's long overdue. So when the time is right, I look forward to supporting moving forward to further combine cohorts at 3 feet. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Garcia. Student Member Shake.
Thank you, President Pritchett. I just wanted to add to Member Garcia's list of community members to thank. We had some students who were more eloquent than I can ever hope to be. So thank you too for your words. I have a ton of questions, and I think I'm going to hold off on the comments because you guys have heard them 1,000 times. So I'm just going to ask some clarifying questions. Chief Bieda, I think, went into some of this last week of how this would happen. But before I go into some of the analysis questions, I have questions about the MOU itself, which is that, so we've done something which has been identified as consistent with the MOU, which is collapsing those cohorts as 6 feet. And I'm sorry if this question veers into legal advice, you're free to tell me that, but by changing the distancing in the form of cohorts, which is what we're doing, is that violating the MOU? I mean, how is that consistent with the MOU?
The only thing I'll say is that as we've referenced before, we've sent numerous communications to proposing to meet and discuss that issue, and that's consistent with the MOU.
Thank you. Okay. And so moving on to the analysis, Chief Bieda sort of talked about, principals walking from class to class. And so I wish the board had some more information on the analysis itself instead of 4 bullet points. But I'd like to know sort of about secondary and smaller high schools first, which is, as Chief Beat outlined, you have maybe a number of classes that a student attends in a day, and one class might be more, one class might be less. How has that been teased out with regards to secondary and smaller high schools? What are the schools that we've identified? And then I have some more questions after that. So.
I think I will pass that baton over to Chief Beta.
Thank you for those questions, Member Shake. Those are excellent questions. So as I shared last week, and I'll share again this week, we need to continue to thank our site leaders, our teachers, absolutely, and our site leaders, because they are walking classroom to classroom and almost moment to moment, even during the day to day, trying to see if there is any way they could possibly be able to, in our secondary spaces, be able to collapse if we move down to 3 feet. And so when you say which schools would we be able to collapse at 3 feet by doing those walking of classrooms, specifically in middle school, we know that we can collapse Sam Brannan at both 3 feet and 6 feet. At 3 feet, we would also then be able to collapse Sutter Middle and Wilseywood, as well as our Success Academy, which is one of our very special places that we're very proud of. In high school, Member Shake, we would of course be able to collapse our Legion campus, Carver, Health Professions. These are at 3 feet. We could collapse Luther Burbank. SES, we could also collapse at 6 feet. We could collapse the Met. The Met's going to need some desks though, because that's a table school, as you know. So we'll need to make sure we can get some desks in there for you. And we can also collapse West Campus. So we're still very limited with our large comps, but we do have Luther Burbank that we would be able to collapse. And our principals have, and our IS team have literally been working in tandem to walk classrooms to make sure that they actually could do this, not just based on numbers, but based on students who are returning to in-person learning for the next few weeks of our school year.
Thank you, Chief Bieda. That's I'm very selfishly happy because the Met is in that list. But I'd just like to reiterate something that Member Phillips brought up and something that I've talked about in previous questions, which is that we're sticking to the schedule in the MOU. We're just turning 2 into 4 half days. And so once again, when we talk about equity, this is locking out a significant deal of parents who can't pick up their kids in the middle of the day. And so that is something that concerns me once more. In addition, this is not a formal request, an informal one to the board president, to the superintendent, to have a conversation in the coming month on fall, because we keep hearing this, and I would love to sort of, I know Member Villa has spoken to this in previous meetings, but I would love to have some sort of public discussion, and I'm sure there are closed ones, about getting to an agreement for fall, and about ensuring that we're, following up on Resolution 3196 on those matters. And I would just like if board members could be provided a little bit more information on the district analysis so that we can look this over afterwards and sort of communicate with constituents about how this has been done and what school sites specifically. But thank you so much, Mr. Bozio, Chief Bieda, and Superintendent.
Great questions, Member Shake. Member Miller?
Just a few comments quickly. I'm pretty sure y'all know how I stand about this matter. I visited a few school sites last week, and I can tell you that I talked to teachers and the principals, and I've also talked to my constituents and teachers throughout the district, just not in my district alone, not Black, brown, everybody. I want to make sure we're all represented here, that everybody is in an agreement of coming back, following the science, following 3 feet, getting kids back in school, getting kids back safely in school. I want to make sure that we're not just putting these limitations that it's only a certain area or only a certain group are represented. I mean, I can tell you in my district alone, that is not what I'm being told. That's not what I'm hearing. So I want to just make sure that that is heard loud and clear. And I would also like to follow back up with Board Member Borowski of making a motion on this.
Member Rhodes?
Thank you. So my question goes to resources. We're talking about how we're going to implement it. And my thought process is on the site level, what is needed, and talking about electronics, laptops, so on and so forth. Heard a lot from constituents and teachers earlier on that, they didn't have, when they're starting up, they didn't have what they needed to start up. And so if we're going to double the amount that we're having, what insurances can we give that we're going to have the support needed? And if those supports aren't going to be given, then what is the instructional model that teachers should expect to be able to have this classroom environment for our students ready to go?
Couple of things, and then I'll ask Chief Bieda to provide her input as well. Member Rhodes, I think it's a very fair question. What I would say is, in terms of resource allocations, of course, I've been to several of our schools and visited classrooms. I don't believe that what we're talking about here is to bring back more students to in-person instruction and be on Zoom platform for their classroom experience, if you will. Nevertheless, I will make sure to follow up and figure out how we work with our site principals where that might be deemed to be appropriate. But in many of my school site visits, the Polycam has lent itself to allow the teacher to provide in-person instruction and supports so that our students who are still engaged in instruction virtually, to the extent possible, feel like they're in the classroom as well. The model that we would pursue and have pursued doesn't call for each of our students who are in person in the classroom to essentially be doing what they were doing at home, which is to be on Zoom the entirety of their instructional day. Again, the identification of those sites that are at the greatest capacity that would require us to adjust the space between desks. We will certainly assess where we might deem it appropriate to deploy additional Chromebooks for reasons that maybe I can't discuss or come up with right now. And I'll let Chief Bieda describe her perspective as our Chief Academic Officer. But again, we are seeing many of our wonderful educators now basically doing what they've done when our students were there, using the whiteboard, incorporating technology, videos, and all of those kinds of things. And again, capitalizing on the use of the Polycam so that students at home feel like they're engaged with their peers who are in the classroom.
Thank you for that, and I look forward to hearing from Chief Bieda as well. I would say I've visited all of my sites, and at the majority of the sites, they are using the systems of students bringing laptops and sitting in front of them and being in Zoom in class. I don't know, and if I'm interpreting right, you're saying that that's not happening across the district. Some sites are actually just using the Polycam and students aren't using their laptops and using Chromebooks and Zoom. Is that correct, Superintendent?
Yeah, no, I can tell you from my observations, and I would want our Chief Academic Officer to give her perspective in terms of pedagogy, but our design has not been to return our students to in-person instruction and continue to be on Zoom the whole time that they're in the classroom. And so where it might be appropriate that students have access to a Chromebook because they're receiving in-person instruction, then we will assess where we might have to deploy additional computers. We will not have by next Wednesday enough Chromebooks for every student in the classroom, plus another Chromebook in their home. And so that is not possible. We have more Chromebooks on order at this time. I don't believe that we could place an order tomorrow and get thousands next week because everybody is waiting for additional Chromebooks. But again, I would say I would ask Chief Bieda to give her perspective again, instructionally and pedagogically, in terms of your question.
Thank you. Chief Bieda, floor is yours.
Thank you. Superintendent shared, I think, a beautiful summary of what's happening. I think we need to acknowledge a couple things. Thing one, our teachers have forever changed their practice. They've learned some new skills, some new tools, and we need to just continue to celebrate what they've learned. And they have been bringing that learning back to this concurrent model. And we're hearing some incredible stories about them using both in-person instruction, the polycams, as well as being able to access and help students to access additional instruction on a Zoom or in the classroom while they're Zooming. But that is not our primary mode of instruction. We want our kids, we want our students at all ages and levels, we want them talking to each other, working in collaborative groups. If we remember last week, remember that video noise? We need that noise. Our kids need that noise. And part of that noise comes from getting away from the screen and being able to act and interact with each other and with their gift, their teacher. And that's what we've missed. That's what we know our kids have missed. And that's what we also know our teachers have missed. It's so nice to hear teachers' voices as we did this evening. And we know our teachers missed that too. So pedagogically, we have to acknowledge that our teachers have learned some amazing new skills and they're going to be, they'll continue to balance that. But I don't think that the best way for our kids to continue to learn is to be constantly Zooming in the classroom. They need to be working in groups, working together, putting their hands on materials. And even if it's just for these last few weeks, those opportunities are grand opportunities because we've also talked about that restorative restart. We want to end this year with our kids so excited that they can't wait to come back to school all day, every day next year together. And that's really going to happen if they get opportunities to interact. So we're going to be looking for a balance, Member Rhodes, for teachers to be able to have opportunities to use their skills. But there's no expectation that every student is sitting in a classroom on a computer for the entire 3 hours that they're with us, whether it's 2 days a week or 4 days a week.
Thank you for that. And I think that across our system, I understand at the level of our cabinet and our board level, that might be the expectation, Chief Bieda, and what might be what we would like to see. But I would like to let you know that that's not happening across our system. And I would like you and our cabinet and our superintendent to ensure that that happens across our system as we move this direction so that our kids can have what they need to be successful, that our teachers have the support that they need to be successful. It's sometimes easy for us to go, hey, this is what we want to see, but if we don't hold accountable and hold ourselves accountable to that viewpoint, then we could be just saying it, and that's not what I would like to see for the children in our district.
Sure.
Thank you.
Member Rhodes, if I could just say, whether it was pre-pandemic or during pandemic, post-pandemic, you're talking about the importance of ensuring that we have an aligned instructional system, that this is happening across the district. And I take that responsibility very seriously. I know our site leaders take that very seriously. So as I've done with you in the past, and I would offer with to all board members, I would be very, very amenable and happy to walk classrooms with you, so that we can see those variations in person. I know that our site leaders would want to host those types of visits. Again, as I've done in the past, I'd be happy to do that with you in your trustee area.
Thank you. I've seen my trustee area. I'm interested in seeing others. When you talk about Area 5, I'm out there. But I have not seen other areas.
Come in my area. I'll give you some tours.
Hey, Mama
I
has
love it.
so that I would like to see other areas so that maybe I'm not just stuck in my area and seeing the view, because if what you're telling me is true, then it does look different in mine.
Got it.
That makes sense?
Absolutely.
Okay.
We can arrange that. And I would say to any other board member, if you want to do the same and do some cross trustee visits, we'd be happy to organize that for you.
Thank you, Superintendent. Thank you, Member Rhodes. Okay, with that, I've had Ms. Collins listening attentively to all of our comments. And so before, oh, sorry, I did not see that. Sorry, Student Member Shake.
I'll defer to Member Phillips first.
Okay, Member Phillips. I just want to say that we have to make sure that we're addressing the specific issues of race here. There does seem to be kind of a disconnect about how gently we discuss race here in our district. So just for the folks in the back, we cannot all lives matter this conversation. We have to make sure that we're very pointed in what we're talking about. So as a Black woman, it's difficult for me to hear someone say that, the experience of all Black people equates to one Black person that they talk to. You know what I'm saying? So I want to make sure that we don't confuse folks and put them in a position where they're trying to figure out, well, maybe one person said it, therefore Black folks aren't a monolith. I just want to make sure that we're using the right terminology, that we're talking about race and how it affects our students and how it affects our teachers who are educating our students, regardless of the unions, regardless of, how much arguing we're going to do back and forth. I think it's really important that we be very specific when we are talking about that. We know the disparities have a lot to do with race and class. And it's important for us to really, really make sure that we're focusing on that. I know it's uncomfortable, but I really believe that it's something that we need to address so that the public knows. Because I think that if we're not speaking plain English, folks who are listening are going to be missing out on a lot of this. And maybe it's just me. I don't think so. I'm sure there are a lot of other people who think the way I'm thinking, but we have to, I almost want to say tone down the language. I know that these meetings are for us and not necessarily for the public can view, but it's really important that we speak to those who are watching us so that they can understand. Because I literally just sat here and had to think that and I wrote it down. It's within the collapsed cohorts of 6 feet. We're now voting to collapse subsets into 3 feet. We're doing them primarily in the elementary. And there are, I guess our comprehensive schools are an issue, but there are some of our smaller high schools that we can do this at. So I just want to make sure that what I'm voting on is the right thing, and that I'm not tripping up over the semantics and the language that seems to be tossed back and forth.
I will make sure that Ms. Collins reiterates what we're voting on prior
in English.
I'm sorry?
In English. Seriously. Sorry, Ann.
Did a member Shake?
Yeah, so I just have a quick question following up on some of the, some of the steps we need to take from here to get this done if we vote yes. I got a text from a parent, because I've been getting texts from parents and students throughout this because they're so excited to hear what we're talking about. But a parent shares or asks, can parent volunteers help to move desks into classrooms to accelerate that process of fuller collapsing of cohorts for all? To staff, I just want to ask, are we good with staffing on doing stuff like those desks? And in the case that we are not, is there an opportunity for parents to help out?
I will give you my perspective, Member Sheikh, and ensure that I have legal counsel as well. It is not as easy as that. We encountered some of this early on. If you remember, when we shuttered our schools, we had families that wanted to mow our lawns and those kinds of things. We are very committed to the collective bargaining process. It is not something that we can just call on volunteers when it is part of the scope of work of employees, if you will, which is why I said earlier that in terms of implementing this, based on the board's decision, if the board were to give me direction to implement this, then we would certainly work with our employees and say, you know, can you help us over the weekend? Those kinds of things, and if that's not possible, then I owe it to the board as part of my responsibilities to come up with other alternatives to make sure that that happens. But it likely wouldn't be calling on volunteers to do it. There are ramifications to doing that.
Thank you. I just wanted our attendance, our audience to hear that from you and to know that there's a collective bargaining agreement that stops stuff like that. So thank you.
Thank you, Student Member Sheikh. All right, with that, Member Morosky.
Thank you. After listening to everyone, I just had a couple of follow-up kind of questions or observations before we move on. And one of them, you know, I think Chief Academic Officer Bieda mentioned the idea of a restorative restart. One thing that had been brought up to me that I just wanted to ask about as we're talking about, you know, bringing more students back to school, more time, is allowing clubs to meet outdoors after school. Where are we on that? And is that possible to just also allow? Do you need a teacher sponsor, or I don't know exactly what our guidance has been on that.
I don't believe that we have Miss Flores here, Victoria Flores, and so I'd have to follow up with you on that question, Member Morowski.
That's fine. I mean, I just take it as, you know, a request to allow that if we can. I think, you know, just we have a couple of weeks, 3, you know, or so weeks more that we can, you know, meet as many of those kind of social emotional needs for connection as we can. So whatever we can do there. And I heard some discussion tonight, even though that it's not the agenda topic, about fall and that conversation. I thought we had been clear about our plans to reopen fully in person 5 days a week. I think there is for whatever reason still, you know, uncertainty, obviously, in our community, in hearing from the public comments. So I would just ask that we figure out, you know, how to communicate that in a way that is very clear, that kind of eliminates some of that uncertainty. I mean, I understand, I think, the reasoning behind it, but next year, we're not going back to Zooming. We're not going back to distance learning. It's going to be in person, full time, 5 days a week. I want everyone to understand that. And so, whatever we can do on that.
Sure thing, Member Morosky. I thought that the resolution that the board adopted was very clear. We did include it as part of some of our communications to our community. It likely, as I'm hearing some of these questions as well, was hidden in our communications. And so I will make sure that our communications department comes up with a different strategy. Perhaps each of our board members does a video as well for your own families. But we do want to make very clear that you adopted a resolution And we have begun the process of thinking about operationalizing the direction that you gave to us as staff. So I know that I saw an article in the San Francisco Chronicle about that issue earlier this afternoon. I saw something, I think a couple of days ago, maybe yesterday, from the LA Times. Our media outlets have not picked up on that, but I appreciate you reminding our community that was the direction that the board gave us as staff.
Thank you. That's all the follow-up questions I have.
Okay, well, will entertain a motion. Did anybody
Do we
else
want
have-
legal counsel to,
What was that?
do we want legal counsel to explain first?
Yes, that's what I was about to do. That's okay. Member Phillips?
I'm just curious what the difference is between me saying what Trustee Morawski said and the response that she got from the superintendent. The whole idea is to make sure that we clarify this and I guess, point it out to the community. And I'm sitting here going, I thought I just said that. I thought I said that. So, is there some confusion between what I'm saying and how that's being absorbed here? I feel like I've said that. And frequently I will say something and it will come from another board member and there will be a much better response. I'm just curious. And it's not on you, Trustee Morawski. It's not. But it worries me that I'm speaking and I'm not being heard at all.
Member Phillips, I don't feel that you're not being heard. In fact, I don't feel like I heard exactly what Member Morawski just said compared to what maybe you and I can have a discussion about this. So we want to make sure that you're being heard on this board as well. But I'd like to kind of get down to the grassroots of why you think that you're not being heard on this board.
We've discussed that before, but I suppose we can discuss that again. Are the rest of the board members, is there something that I'm not doing that perhaps you guys need me to explain deeper? Woo?
You aren't saying the same thing. Not at all. What she said and what you said are two totally different things. If you meant for her to be what she said, you didn't say it. I'm sorry.
So what did I say?
You said, I want things to be in plain English. And what you were referring to, I think, was to the present time, to moving the school district into the rest of the school year. What at least Ms. Morawski was saying was talking about next year. That wasn't, if that was your intent, that didn't come out.
So how come I'm not, and I'm sure my mic's still on, how come I'm not hearing it from the rest of my board members? If you guys don't understand what I'm saying, ask me. I'm here.
I understood what you were saying.
Can we get back to the actual agenda item and we can maybe take this up in a closed session meeting?
Yeah,
on
I think
what's
that we
going
need
on?
to discuss this as a board,
I don't know.
in a board workshop, but I'm happy to sit down and have a conversation with you, Member Phillips.
Right. I'm not gonna help, but okay.
Okay. With that, I have some recommendations for let me get to it real quick. All right, so what I'm hearing from our board, and this can be, I'll entertain a motion of this, but consistent with the resolution 3196, the board instructs staff to expand in-person learning time opportunities by collapsing cohort wherever possible at 3 feet, so students who so choose can attend schools under the existing schedule, but up to 4 days a week at our elementary schools and wherever possible at our secondary schools. They cover everything.
So move.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Student preferential vote?
Aye.
All right, superintendent roll call.
Member Pritchett,
Absolutely aye.
Member Morawski,
Aye.
Member Wu,
Aye.
Member Garcia,
Aye.
Member Villa,
Aye.
Member Rhodes,
Aye.
Member Phillips.
I will abstain.
All right, motion passes. Item 6.0, I will entertain a motion for adjournment.
Moved.
I have a motion and a second. Student preferential vote.
Aye.
All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, see you soon.